So, the philosopher we would like to discuss today, her name is Hannah Arendt. Yeah. Okay, so she is a very important philosopher from the 20th century and she's very inspiring. Yeah, let's look at her background. So, she was born as a Jewish girl, but she was born in Germany. So, you could imagine what kind of turmoil and what kind of struggles that she might have had as a young Jewish girl in Germany. And in 1933, she was forced to leave Germany because if her family had not left Germany, they would have been dragged to the concentration camps and would have been killed. Because of Hitler, right, obviously, so the entire family went to the U.S. to flee from the horrors of concentration camps. And then even after she went to the US, she got education there and then she got a job there and everything. She really wanted to understand why such a cruel thing had to happen. That became her lifelong academic mission. So let's look at the cruelty and brutality of Nazi violence during World War II era. So the only reason that Hitler decided to murder millions of Jewish people was simply because of their race. Yeah, so the Nazi officers, they arrested Jews all over Europe and transported them to different concentration camps, and to transport them, cow trucks and pig trucks were used, and men and women, even innocent children, they were transported for many, many days and weeks without food or water, just like cattle, just like animals. And when they were moved to the concentration camps, they had to do forced labor. And after a certain period of time, they were dragged to a place called gas chamber, and then they were killed with toxic gas. And after they were killed, their bodies were burned. And sometimes the Nazi guards would beat them or even shoot them just for fun and laugh at them, laugh at their pain. So you cannot even imagine how cruel and brutal the treatments were. So let's turn our attention to one man. He was a Nazi officer. His name was I. Heman. I. Heman, yeah. And what kind of role did he play in the Nazi group? He was in charge of transporting the Jews to all over European concentration camps. He basically planned the railway system, all the routes, which made the transportation possible. And of course, at the end of the World War II, Germany lost the war, and many of the Nazi guards and soldiers, they needed to be punished according to the law, but he escaped. He escaped to a very faraway country in Argentina, and he was hiding there. He was hiding there for more than 10 years because uh, there was the Israeli secret police. Israel is the country that Jewish people established after the World War II, right? So Israeli secret police, they were tracking down the Nazi officers, former officers all over Europe. And then finally, Israeli government, the police tracked him down, caught him in Argentina, and brought him to Jerusalem for a court trial. Yeah, and uh, Hannah Arendt, she was living in the U.S. back then, U.S. At that time, and she heard that Heman was captured in Argentina and is being brought back to Jerusalem, Israel, to get a trial, and she was excited. Her heart was pounding. Oh my God, this is a historical moment. And then she learned about the plan of New York Times, the newspaper. The New York Times is going to send a news reporter to Jerusalem to cover the trials, and she volunteered to become a special reporter. And then she said that She was a college professor, but she said that I want to be a reporter. I want to be a special reporter for New York Times. Please send me there. So she was sent there, and she got this great opportunity to witness the trial. And then I want to take a look at this video, about the trial that was going on. Yeah. Okay.
175cm 키에 희끗희끗한 머리, 평범한 옆집 아저씨처럼 생긴 이 남자.
So finally, the man who committed an enormous crime appeared, and everybody was expecting to see some kind of evil-looking man, like a horrifyingly, bad-looking man. But the man who appeared at the court, he was bald, looked so ordinary, sometimes looked really kind and gentle. It was Ahiman, yeah.
나치 홀로코스트 총책임자 아돌프 아이히만입니다. 인간의 폭력성, 잔인성의 극단을 보여주었던 인류 최대 대학살 홀로코스트. 이를 계획하고 지휘한 아돌프. 세계대전이 끝나고 아르헨티나에 숨어있던 그를 이스라엘 정보부가 찾아내어 예루살렘 법정에 세웁니다. 질질 짜는 척이라도 할 줄 알았던 그는 단 한 번도 후회하는 감정을 보이지 않았고 자신은 국가의 법과 명령을 따르는 공무원이었고 시키는 대로 근면하게 업무를 처리했다고 차분하고 당당하게 진술합니다.
Yeah, he was almost like an AI robot. And then when the judge asked him, hey, Mr. Aiman, why did you participate in such a horrible crime? And then he just simply said that I just followed my order. I was a government bureaucrat. I was a government official. 저 공무원이잖아요. I just followed the orders from my supervisor. I followed the order of my boss. Is there something wrong with that? Is there something wrong with that? That's what he said. 저는 명령을 따랐을 뿐이에요.
이를 본 철학자 한나 아렌트. 악이란 것은 어쩌면 너무 단순하고 평범하게 옳고 그름을 직접 생각하지 않는 데서 비롯된다는 이론을 제시합니다.
Oh yeah, so he came up with this amazing philosophical theory, which was that, so we usually think that evil would come from, very extraordinary sources, and an evil man would look different or has a very different background from us. But Hannah Arendt is suggesting that no, everybody can be evil. Even very, very ordinary people like us can become evil when we fail to think for ourselves, when we fail to think independently, and then when we fail to determine for ourselves, and when we are blindly following the authority or someone else's opinion, and when we do not apply our critical thinking, then even an ordinary person can become extremely evil.
시키는 일 열심히 하는 게 옳다고 생각했던 아이히만 끝까지 뻔뻔한 모습으로 교수형에 처해집니다. 악은 특별한 곳이 아닌 타인에게 무관심한 평범한 인간의 마음속 한 부분에 있다. 악의 평범성이었습니다.
악의 평범성, that's banality of evil. That's the concept that she came up with. Yeah, okay. So she went to the court. Yeah, and then when finally Aiman appeared at the court, she was so blown away by his ordinary looking, small, skinny, bald hair. Yeah, a complete opposite to horrific crimes that he committed. And then people listened to what his neighbors told about him, and then the neighbors were so surprised. Mr. Aiman? He was such a kind neighbor. He was such a loving and gentle father. He was a wonderful man. And then people just couldn't believe what he had done wrong. So the evil can look very normal and ordinary. Why did he kill the Jews? Why did he participate in the crimes? Did he hate the Jews so much? No, he didn't hate the Jews at all. He just obeyed the law. When the boss, supervisor gave him an order, he didn't question the morality of it or not. He just said, yes, sir. Okay, I'm going to follow that order. He did not break any laws. He just followed the order. He did his job, right? So where does evil come from? Evil doesn't come from especially darker sources or especially darker people. Actually, evil comes from the failure to think. Yeah. So a very dangerous man is not like a criminal or like a killer or a murderer or anything like that. the most dangerous man in the world could be an unthinking man. 사고하지 않는 인간, 생각하지 않는 인간, 자기가 스스로 판단하지 않는 인간. That could be the most dangerous man on earth. Yeah, a person who lacks imagination. Yeah, lacks imagination. So nowadays, studies in the realm of math and sciences, they get more emphasis, and then uh, you guys have to study more science and more math to be successful, and then to go to good universities. That is your number one priority. But I think studies in philosophy and studies in literature are as important because it, it teaches us how to imagine from other people's shoes, other people's perspectives. For example, we read the book Flipped recently, and while reading Flipped, we learned to think from Bryce's perspective in the first chapter. Next chapter, we learned to think from Julie's perspective. We learn the imagination through our literary works, and we learn critical thinking ability from philosophy, and then we get the tools to determine for ourselves when uh, we are about to perform a certain action. We have the tools that we learn from Nietzsche, and we have the tools that we learn from Kant to determine whether our own action is right or wrong. Yeah. So now to grow up into an unthinking man, which could totally evolve into an evil man, we have the tools of literature and we have the tools of philosophy. That's why I'm teaching you these. So he completely lacked imagination. If he had imagined the consequences, the possible consequences of his action, he could have never done it. Planning the routes for the concentration camps, and then the man will be, dragged into the gas chamber, killed in the toxic gases, their children looking at their parents passing away in such pain, being tormented. If this man, Iheman, had that kind of imagination and then the ability to think from another person's perspective, he could have never done that. He could have never done this. That's why imaginative power is so important, and critical thinking ability is so important. Yeah, how not to fall into the dangerous unthinking state. Be imaginative, right? And then the best way to grow our imaginative ability is to absorb ourselves into literary works and philosophical works. Yeah, okay. So the discussion question is, of course, find some agreements that you have with Hannah Arendt and find some criticisms or problems with her idea. Also, on top of that, respond to this question. What are some of the evils that we commit because we fail to think and imagine in our daily lives, or from history, or from recent events or current affairs, anything. 우리도 모르게 저지르는 악함, 생각하지 않아서 벌어지는 그런 악함. I will give you my own example, but promise that you're not going to copy my example. Okay? Yeah, I'll share my own example. So I started thinking about this. 내가 생각을 아예 안 해서 저지르는 그런 악함이 나의 일상생활에 뭐가 있을까 생각을 해봤어. I thought about that. 근데 지금은 여기 물컵을 요걸 먹잖아. 근데 1년, 2년 전만 해도 그 일회용 그 페트병 있잖아요. 그거 330ml짜리 그거를 쿠팡에서 주문해가지고 맨날 그거를 3개씩 먹었어. 그러면은 how many plastic bottles do I produce every month? Maybe like 100, right? 100. And then I didn't see any problem with that. But one day I saw a documentary on YouTube. It was about the sea turtles that were dying. And the sea turtles were dying because the plastic pieces were stuck in their nose. and then they were bleeding from their nose, and I was thinking that, oh my god, I was the evil monster who was causing the death of the sea turtles. I was not imagining the consequences of my actions, and at that moment when I stopped using the, you know, one-time use plastic bottles, and then I started drinking from my own cup. Yeah. Anyways, think about that from your personal life, or from history, or from current events, or anything like that. Yeah. Okay. So that's it for philosophy.